Welcome to the first technical deep dive session of the Avanti Endpoint Manager. In this session, we will be going over a high-level overview of Avanti Endpoint Manager and its features. So what is Avanti Endpoint Manager and why Avanti Endpoint Manager? So Avanti Endpoint Manager is an endpoint management solution to manage all of your assets, to both discover, manage, and secure all of those assets. And it's not just a point solution, it's actually very modular. So as well as the default and core functionality of Endpoint Manager, we can also extend that functionality out for additional and extensive asset management, but also endpoint security with additional modules. For this series, we will be covering just the core functions and features of Endpoint Manager, and we won't be going too much into the endpoint security as there is another series for endpoint security. So why Avanti Endpoint Manager, and what are the unique benefits of Avanti Endpoint Manager? So if we start off with discovery, with most solutions, you're able to discover maybe 70 or 80% of the assets, and quite often a lot of the solutions are tailored to a certain hardware type or even operating system type. Whereas with Avanti Endpoint Manager, we can manage all of the assets very quickly, easily, in one pane of glass. So we can discover the hardware no matter what it is, and we can discover and start to manage a whole range of OSs. So we really try to bring all of those assets and discover all of those assets in a single pane of glass and a single console. So once we've actually discovered all of these assets and we bring them into management, we can then start to do a number of different things with these devices. So we can start to lock these devices down with certain configurations and settings. We can start to do some remote management of these devices, so we can start to deliver software, and even with our endpoint security product, patches, and we can start to remote control these devices. Now, the key difference between us and some other vendors in this aspect is that you can do this all from a single pane of glass, all from this one console, and it's very easy and frictionless to be able to do this. And we also have the benefit that when we're delivering these software, these patches, and when we're remote controlling these devices, it doesn't matter where these devices are, as long as they've got an internet connection, we're able to remote control them. So even if these devices are outside of the network, they're not connected to a VPN, if they're in a cafe, an airport, or a train station, or even at home, we're able to still have visibility of these devices, deliver software and updates to those devices, but also remote control them. The next step is efficient and automated. So we can actually, with everything we do in Endpoint Manager, we can make sure that process is as efficient as possible. We can fully automate a lot of the processes around imaging, delivering software and updates and things like that. And we have a number of different ways of delivering this content, this software, these patches to those devices. One of the key ways that we do have is our self-electing subnet services, client self-electing platform. And what that is rather than delivering the same update or the same piece of software to 50 different machines, we deliver it to one of those machines, and then that machine then delivers that content on to the rest of those devices. And that machine that's been elected, if for whatever reason that machine's not online, then automatically our platform would elect another machine to receive that content and distribute it out to the other devices on that network. The final step is improve the end user experience. So rather than the user logging in and not having what they need and having to contact IT, what we're actually able to do here is we're able to set certain settings on the devices, maybe push down the configuration profile to configure those settings tailored to that user. But also, if that user logs in and finds they don't have a piece of software, rather than us having to manually deliver that software, we're also able to have a self-service portal where the user can go and they can actually request bits of software or download bits of software and install bits of software from that portal that we've allowed them to have customized to their role and the job they need to do. The last point that we can see on the screen is our integrated endpoint security. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but just to give a high-level overview of the points. So in our endpoint security, we have the patch management, we have the application control, device control, privilege management, and the antivirus. However, all of these are covered in our endpoint security series that we've got. So now to go into these sections in a bit more detail. So starting off with discovery inventory. So we've already said that we can discover all of the assets in an environment. So we can ping them. We can ping an IP range, and any devices that can respond to ping, we can discover, and also any devices that can respond to SNMP we can pick up. We can do active and passive scanning, and when we actually do that, and we've discovered the devices, we can then bring them into management in a number of different ways. One of the traditional ways is either agent-based, so installing an agent on those devices, or agentless. So actually not needing to install an agent on those devices, but being able to scan them and start to do some inventory management. And with that inventory management, what we're doing there is we're picking up all the hardware and all the software. So any hardware of that machine, we're picking that up and inventorying that, and any software installed, and also settings and some health related aspects about that machine. We're also picking that up and inventorying it into this console, which we can then use to report on and take actions as we need to. So that's the traditional way of discovering and managing these devices. We do actually have another way that we can bring these devices into management, and that is modern device management, so MDM. So what would happen with MDM is we'd configure a configuration profile, we'd put all the settings in that we want to push down to that machine, and then the user would log in with their corporate username and password, and when they do that, a configuration profile would be pushed down to that device, and all the settings would be set based on that configuration profile. So things like Windows firewall, the Wi-Fi, the printers, how the start menu looks, and what settings are applied to that machine can all be included in this configuration profile that's pushed down to that machine when they log in with their corporate details. And what we can actually do on this is when the user logs into the modern device management, we can actually have co-management where also at the same time the agent can be pushed down to that device, so that device the settings are being managed by the modern device management in Windows, but then also we've got that other layer where we've got the agent installed and we can fully utilize all of the functionality in Endpoint Manager for this machine. The last thing that we can do around management of machines is our OS provisioning. So actually, before we send a device out to a user, we can actually do the traditional way of deploying an image, having a template image and deploying that image to devices, and then having a number of steps after that image has been deployed to that device. Maybe configure the OS, change certain settings, or even deploy software to that device. And that process of OS provisioning, or the process of the modern device management, co-management with the agent, we can make that completely automated and completely zero touch. So this is a sort of model that you'd expect to see from the cradle to the grave, managing all of the assets. So zero touch provisioning. The first step would be the customer would buy their device from the vendor. That device can be shipped directly to the user, whether it be in the office or at home. That user would open it up, they'd log in with their corporate details. When they do that, the configuration profile would be pushed down to that device. All the settings would be set as required. And if that user then finds that actually there's some software that they don't have and they require that, rather than requesting it from IT, they can actually go to their self-service portal, which Avanti Endpoint Manager as part of that agent would have installed, and they can then go and install any software that's available to them. And because their device is actually being managed by Endpoint Manager now, they've got that MDM profile and they've got that agent installed. In Endpoint Manager, we've got visibility of that device, and actually we can get things like alerts about what's happening on this machine and any problems that we might see on that machine before the user might see it. And then we can obviously do break fix on this machine to fix any issues that the user has. And if there are issues that are a bit more complicated or maybe we're not able to fix, we can actually go and reset that machine and bring it back to the original state that the user received it in, but the user would still retain all their data. It would just be all those settings on the configuration profile, the MDM profile, that we would re-push down to that machine. And of course, the last step is end of life. So in Endpoint Manager, we can, in the inventory, we can look at many different things, from what hardware is running to this application usage, but we can also, using one of our modules, we can actually see what the warranty is of that machine, how long that machine's been running for, and a number of other things relating to that hardware. And so before that machine is end of life or out of warranty, we can actually plan for that and start this whole cycle again. So the next bit we're going to talk about is remote assistance. So yes, we can do remote management, we can remote control any of these devices, doesn't matter if it's Windows, Mac or Linux, and actually as part of that remote control, we can remote control them no matter where they are, whether they're on network or off network and only have an internet connection. And this remote control is all in the same window, it's all in that single pane of glass, all in the console, so we're not having to download or install a separate application and use a separate application. It's very easy and frictionless. The next is our application management. So the first thing with application management is we can deploy apps to our Windows, Mac and Linux devices in a number of different formats. And we do have this self-service portal where the users can go and they can actually, we can publish, as IT, we can publish any apps in there and the users can go there and they can install any of those apps that have been published and have been put there for them. Now, the other bits in application management that we are able to do is we're able, as part of that inventory, able to see any application usage. So we can see how often software is being used that is installed on our users' machines, and then we can, with additional modules again, we can start to bring license information into the picture and start to actually see, based on how much software is installed, how many licenses we're licensed for, and how often that software is being used, we can actually start to reclaim applications. So rather than just deploying applications to devices and end users, we can start to uninstall software in the background as well from users that aren't using the software, and we can reuse those licenses and that software for other users. And the last thing I should mention is bandwidth efficient. So we do have a number of different methods, some that I've already mentioned, of how we can actually deliver this software to the end users and how we can use bandwidth controls for those slower networks. So that is everything Endpoint Manager. Now there's just a few more additional steps which are actually add-on modules in Endpoint Manager. The first one is data analytics. So what data analytics is it actually drills down a lot more into that license management and also the warranty information. So it's an additional module that really just gives us an extra step into asset management. So with data analytics, we're going to be able to gather our license information from multiple data sources, whether that be from our Microsoft portal, our Adobe portal, maybe even our VMware portal. And we're going to be able to bring all that license information into this one pane of glass and match it against the software that we've got installed and our software's usage information to find out exactly what software is being used, how often is it being used, and verse that against how many licenses we have and what's the difference. Do we need to buy more licenses, or actually do we need to start reclaiming software because we're over licensed? The other side of this is the warranty information. So being able to link to and bring warranty information from multiple data sources, whether that be HP, Lenovo, or Dell, or other vendors, and actually seeing, okay, what devices do we have and when do they go out of warranty? What actions do we need to take on that? Are there machines that are going out of warranty in the next 30 or 60 days? And do we need to, start preparing for this scenario? The last thing to mention in this first session is Cloud Services Appliance, CSA. So what is the Cloud Services Appliance, CSA? This is the device that we need. It's an additional thing we need, and we need this to be able to do that off-network communication. So to be able to remote control those devices that are off network, deploy that software that's that to those devices that are off network, and also deploy the patches to the devices that are off network, we need this thing called a cloud services appliance. And what this does is it's just a gateway device. So any devices with an agent installed, they obviously can't reach our endpoint manager because they're at home or they're abroad or wherever they are. They're not in the office and they're not connected to a VPN. So they're going to connect to the internet and they're going to try communicate to our endpoint management server. They're not going to be able to, so the agent is going to switch them over to using this cloud services appliance, which is going to say, okay, thank you for your request. I'm going to pass that on to endpoint manager, and then endpoint manager is going to provide the software or any other policy updates and configurations it needs to that machine via the cloud services appliance. That is everything for this first session. Thank you for joining.